I never thought survival would feel this lonely. Not until the day I stood in my own hallway, staring at the woman who used to be my sister, wondering when she had become a stranger. My name's Damien, 34, and I spend most of my waking life either beneath concrete beams or behind steel gates, construction foreman by day, private security by night. I've got a daughter, Willa. 7 years old. Bright as summer sunlight and the reason I get up every day despite the exhaustion chewing at my bones. For a while, it was just us. Me, Willa, and the quiet peace of our tiny rented duplex on the edge of the city. We didn't have much, but it was enough. That peace shattered 6 months ago when Marla showed up. Marla, my younger sister. All panic and mascara-smudged tears, dragging 2 half-asleep kids and a battered suitcase up my front steps. "Just for a little while," she said, hugging me like a lifeline. "Until I get back on my feet." Her landlord had evicted her, she claimed. Her boyfriend had split. Her job prospects were non-existent. I couldn't turn her away, not with the kids standing there shivering in the cold. At first, I convinced myself it was temporary. That I was doing what any decent brother would. I even told Willa, "It's just for a couple weeks, baby girl. Let's be kind." Weeks turned into months. At first, she pitched in. Made a few meals. Took Willa and her kids to the park. That was the first 10 days. Then nothing. Marla sank into my couch like it was her throne. Morning, noon, and night she scrolled her phone, watching videos and browsing online sales. The only time she moved was to raid my fridge or yell at her kids when they got too loud. Meanwhile, my days grew longer. I added more hours on site, then doubled my night shifts. I stopped having weekends. I stopped sleeping. I stopped breathing without worrying where the next meal was coming from, not for me or Willa, but for 3 extra mouths I never asked to feed. Still, I told myself I could handle it. I was used to hard work. Grew up learning how to stretch $1 and silence hunger with stale crackers and pride. I thought I could power through. But it wasn't just about money. It was about Marla sitting at my table one evening, drinking sodas she didn't buy, her kids ripping into the groceries I barely afforded, and not even offering a thank you. I came home from a 16-hour shift and she didn't even glance up. That night, I finally said something. I rubbed my sore hands together, exhaustion thick in my throat. "Marla," I started quietly. "I need to talk to you about money." She didn't even blink. Just picked at her food with a plastic fork. "I can't keep paying for everything, for you, the kids. I have Willa to take care of. I'm stretched thin." Her fork clattered onto her plate. Then came the laugh. Sharp. Cruel. "You can't afford it?" she mocked. "You've got 2 jobs, Damien." I closed my eyes, trying to stay calm. "That's not the point," I said. "This isn't sustainable. You've been here 6 months. I'm buying all the food, paying rent, covering utilities. I can't." "Oh, please," she snapped, cutting me off. "You don't even have a mortgage. You're just being selfish." Selfish. That word hit like a brick to the gut. A word I'd heard one too many times. I remembered the day she moved in, full of gratitude, promising to pull her weight. I'd believed her. Now here she was, calling me selfish for protecting the future of my daughter. I clenched my jaw. "I've been covering everything, Marla. Groceries, school supplies, daycare. Now you're asking for after-school classes, new clothes, birthday parties? When does it end?" "It ends," she said with venom, "when I don't need it anymore. That's what real family does. Or maybe that's just what real brothers do." I stared at her. At the woman who'd once been a goofy kid trailing behind me in hand-me-down sneakers. Now she looked at me like I was her servant. A living ATM. She leaned in, voice dripping poison. "Can't afford my kids? What a loser." The words echoed louder than I expected. Willa was standing in the doorway, her face pale. So were Marla's kids. They had heard every word. That night, I lay awake, listening to the hum of the fridge and the muffled snoring of children in a house that didn't feel like mine anymore. I had worked myself raw to keep that roof over their heads. My own daughter hadn't had a new pair of shoes in months because Marla's kids needed 3 different kinds of cereal. And still, I was the loser? I didn't sleep. I watched the ceiling turn from black to gray and made a decision. The next morning, I pulled on my boots, packed my lunch, and went to work like usual. But inside, I was no longer the same man. I had tried kindness. I had offered help. Now it was time for boundaries. Because what Marla didn't know was that I hadn't just hit my financial limit, I had hit my breaking point. I didn't say a word the next day. Not when Marla asked if I could pick up more bread. Not when she tossed an empty cereal box on the counter like it was my problem. I simply nodded, went to work, came home, and quietly ate dinner with Willa in our room. But by the second night, the silence cracked. "Damien," Marla said, arms crossed in the hallway like a gatekeeper. "We need to talk." I sighed. Of course we did. I leaned against the wall, already feeling the weariness pulling at my spine. "What about?" She rolled her eyes. "About what you said the other night. In front of the kids." My eyebrows raised. "You mean when you called me a loser?" "Yeah, I remember." She huffed, brushing past it. "You embarrassed me. The kids are scared now. They think we're gonna be homeless." I shook my head. "You embarrassed yourself. All I did was tell the truth. I never said I was kicking you out. I said I can't afford to pay for everything anymore." "Same thing," she snapped. "If you stop helping, we'll be out on the street. What do you expect me to do? Get a minimum wage job at the corner store?" I didn't even flinch. "Yes. Exactly that." Marla stared at me like I'd suggested she go panhandle in rush hour traffic. "You're unbelievable," she spat. "I'm a single mom, Damien. That's not how it works. I can't just go flip burgers or scan groceries like a teenager." I kept my voice low and calm. "Why not?" "Because I have 2 kids to look after." "And I have 1, I replied. "And I work 2 jobs." For a moment, she looked stunned. Like it hadn't fully registered that I was also juggling the same weight she claimed made her incapable. "You've always been selfish," she muttered. "Just like when we were kids." That was it. That was the final straw. "No," I said firmly. "I've been generous to a fault. I gave you 6 months of free housing. I fed your kids, bought their school clothes, paid for their bus passes. You never even said thank you. And now you want more?" Her face flushed. "You're abandoning your own family." My voice was steady now, like I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. "I never agreed to raise your children, Marla. I agreed to help for a little while. That time's up." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "I'm not kicking you out today. But I'm setting a boundary. 1 month. 30 days. That's more than fair. You get a job, figure out your next move. But come the 1st of next month, if you haven't figured it out, you're out." She stared at me, stunned. Like I'd just spoken a language she didn't understand. "You can't be serious." I looked her dead in the eyes. "Watch me." And I walked away. The next day, the air in the house shifted. Marla tried to act like everything was fine. She made pancakes, burnt and flavorless, but pancakes nonetheless. She asked about my day, left a cup of coffee on the counter when I came home. I didn't trust it. By the end of the week, the charm had worn off. She flopped back onto the couch like a deflated balloon, sighing loudly every time she opened the fridge. Her kids asked for takeout and she glared at me when I said no. Then came the guilt trips. "Damien, the kids need new winter coats. Damien, if you could just help with the field trip fee. Willa gets everything. Why can't my kids have the same?" I reminded her, gently but firmly, "Because I'm Willa's dad. Not theirs." And that's when she made her next move. The family ambush. I came home the next Saturday to find my living room full. My Aunt Carol, Cousin Jessie, and even Grandma were all packed into the space like they were staging an intervention. Marla sat center stage, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Oh, there he is," Aunt Carol said, arms crossed. "The man who threw his own family out on the street." I dropped my tool bag slowly by the door. "What is this?" My grandmother stood up, voice trembling. "Damien, sweetheart, your sister told us everything. How you kicked her out. How the children have no food, no future." "I didn't kick her out," I interrupted. "She's still here. I gave her a month to get a job and figure things out. She's had 6 months of free rent and food. I'm not a villain. I'm tired." Jessie looked uncomfortable. "She said you abandoned her." I sighed. "Let's talk about abandonment, shall we?" The room went still. "When our mom got sick, who took her to chemo? Me. When our dad lost his mobility, who changed his bandages and made his meals? Me." Marla was off chasing a boyfriend and posting vacation photos. Marla gasped. "How dare you bring that up?" I turned to the room. "I'm done being used. You want to help her? Great. Open your homes. Open your wallets. Otherwise, don't sit in my house and tell me I'm the problem." The silence was brutal. Aunt Carol looked away. Jesse shifted in his seat. Grandma blinked, unsure. "You're serious?" Carol said finally. "You're really kicking her out?" "She has 3 more weeks," I replied. "After that, yes." "And the kids?" "She's their mother. Not me." I left the room and didn't come back until everyone else was gone. That night, I sat with Willa on the floor, building Lego towers, listening to her giggle without tension behind her laughter for the first time in weeks. I had drawn the line. And for once, no one had erased it behind my back. Week 1 after the ultimatum, and you'd think I'd flipped a switch in Marla's brain, but no, she acted like nothing had changed. She was still parked on my couch every day, scrolling through her phone while her kids tore through the house like they were auditioning for a cereal commercial. She still asked if I could grab a few things from the store after a 15-hour shift, and she still left dishes in the sink like the kitchen cleaned itself. And me? I kept my mouth shut. I didn't argue. I didn't remind her every day. I didn't want a war in front of the kids. I just waited. Watched. Because part of me needed to know, would she change? By the end of week 2, it became clear. She wasn't just in denial. She thought I was bluffing. "You'd never actually kick your own sister out," she scoffed one night after I reminded her she had 2 weeks left. "That's not who you are." She didn't know who I was anymore. She only remembered the brother who used to say yes to everything. The guy who paid her electric bill in college, let her crash at his place during one of her countless breakups, and never once asked for repayment. That guy was gone. Because that guy had burned out. The guilt-tripping came back with a vengeance. She sighed dramatically when she had to make peanut butter sandwiches for the kids. Slammed the fridge door when the almond milk ran out. She even whispered loud enough for Willa to hear, "Guess we don't have enough for everyone anymore." When that didn't work, she tried another tactic, family reinforcements. More texts. More phone calls. Aunt Carol again. "Damien, this is ridiculous. Are you really giving her a deadline? What is this, a court eviction?" "Yes," I said. "That's exactly what it is." She went quiet. Then came Grandma again, the only one I'd been remotely soft toward. "Sweetheart," she said, voice heavy with disappointment, "you've always been so dependable. Don't let bitterness turn you into someone cold. Think of the children." "I do," I replied. "Every day. The one I'm actually responsible for. Willa's missed out on more than you realize these past 6 months." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Well, you might be right about that." Week 3. Panic started creeping in. Marla got motivated. Or tried to act like it. She made a weird attempt at being helpful, cooked some under-seasoned spaghetti, folded laundry half-heartedly, even handed me a cold cup of coffee after I got home from my night shift. I didn't fall for it. Then came the fake effort. "I applied for a job," she announced one evening, phone in hand like it was a trophy. I raised an eyebrow. "Where?" She waved a hand vaguely. "Something online. Remote customer service or whatever." "Did you actually apply?" I asked. "Or did you just look at the listing?" She narrowed her eyes. "Why are you interrogating me?" "At least I'm trying." "You have 1 week left, Marla," I said calmly. "You've had 6 months." She stormed off like I'd slapped her. By the end of week 3, the panic gave way to rage. I walked in one evening and found her pacing the kitchen like a storm cloud about to burst. "I can't believe you're really doing this," she yelled as soon as I shut the door. I dropped my keys on the counter and sighed. "Doing what, exactly?" "Kicking out your own family. You're heartless." "No," I said. "I gave you a deadline. A month. You chose not to take it seriously. A month is nothing." She screamed. "You expect me to find a job, a place, daycare in 4 weeks? You have no idea how hard that is." I crossed my arms. "You know what's hard? Working 2 jobs, coming home to a house where I can't even afford my own daughter's field trip because I'm feeding 3 extra mouths that don't belong to me." That shut her up. For about 5 seconds. Then she narrowed her eyes and hissed, "You're a monster." I laughed, not cruelly, just tired. "No, Marla. I'm a man who finally got tired of being used. You're ruining my life." I looked her straight in the eye. "No. I'm finally forcing you to take responsibility for it." The next day, things were quieter. Tense, but quiet. Marla wasn't trying anymore. No charm. No guilt. Just cold silence. Then came the final night. I was sitting in my room, reviewing some job leads for better paying gigs when I heard the softest knock at my door. "Damien?" I looked up. She opened the door just a crack, stepping inside like a little girl who was scared of thunder. "Are you really making me leave tomorrow?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Yeah. I am." She bit her lip. "I don't know where to go." I shrugged. "Figure it out." She looked at me, waiting. Hoping the old version of me would break. That I'd say, "Okay, fine, one more month." But I didn't. And after a few seconds of standing there in silence, she turned and left. The next morning, I left early. I didn't want to be there when she packed. When I came home that evening, the house was quiet. Her room, empty. Her kids' shoes, gone. No note. No goodbye. Just space. And silence. And peace. For the first time in half a year, I sat on my couch, closed my eyes, and breathed. The house felt like mine again. A strange thing happened after Marla left. Nothing. No tantrums. No rage texts. No desperate calls begging me to reconsider. Just silence. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel like a battlefield or a daycare center. It felt like a home. Mine. Willa's. Ours. I walked into the kitchen that first night after work, expecting to see the usual disaster: snack wrappers, half-empty juice boxes, dishes piled up like a forgotten monument to laziness. Instead, the countertops were clean. My groceries were still where I left them. The milk wasn't empty. There was quiet, beautiful, sacred quiet. And Willa? She smiled more. She started humming again while doing homework, started talking to me about school, about this girl in her class who wore glitter shoes and said sprinkles instead of stars. We went for walks. I picked her up from school instead of working overtime just to afford food for 5 people. I didn't realize how much I'd been sacrificing, not just money, but moments. I had let guilt steal my peace. And now, I was getting it back. A few days after Marla's exit, my phone buzzed. "Marla. Hope you're happy. The kids are miserable. I don't know how you sleep at night." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed my reply. "Me. Better than I have in years." I hit send and didn't look back. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Life felt easy. Lighter. I took Willa to the zoo, our first real day out in over a year. We laughed ourselves breathless watching lemurs chase each other. She got to ride a pony, and I got to remember what fatherhood looked like without resentment clinging to every hug. I finally fixed the rattle in my car's engine that had been bugging me for months. I updated my resume, started looking into day jobs that paid more, so I could maybe quit night shifts someday. I was living, not just surviving. Then came the best text I'd gotten in months. "Rachel, my cousin. Guess who's getting a taste of her own medicine?" I blinked. "Me? What do you mean, Rachel?" Aunt Carol kicked her out. I sat back on the couch, nearly laughing. "Me? You're joking, Rachel." "Nope." Lasted 2 months. Carol thought she could fix her. But Marla pulled the same routine: no job, no effort, just lounging around all day. Eventually Carol had enough and told her to pack up. I imagined the scene vividly: Marla with her arms crossed, Aunt Carol yelling from the doorway, "I raised 4 kids with less than you've got, now get out." Poetic justice. Apparently, after leaving Aunt Carol's, Marla found a dingy 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. Rent controlled, bare bones. No magic savior to bail her out this time. And with no one left to sponge off, she had to do the unthinkable: get a job. Retail. Minimum wage. Long hours. Just like the ones I'd worked since I was 17. According to Rachel, she hated every minute of it. Said her feet hurt, customers were rude, and her manager was disrespectful. I'd be lying if I said I didn't smile a little. Because that was life. Real life. The one she'd always mocked me for enduring. The one she had avoided for years by latching onto whoever let her. The peace in my home only deepened. Willa started drawing again, crayon masterpieces of us at the zoo, stick figures with hearts for heads. She had stopped asking where her cousins were. She never mentioned Marla. She just moved forward. So did I. For the first time in forever, I started saving again. Just a little. A few bucks here and there, stashed into a coffee tin under the sink. A dream took shape in my head: a small house, maybe a backyard, a dog someday. Something real. Something earned. I thought the saga was over. But Marla had one last move left. It was nearly a month after she moved out when the message came. Marla. You didn't just abandon me. You abandoned my children. You think you're the hero here? They looked up to you. I stared at the screen. Felt a mix of sadness, anger, and disbelief. Then I typed my final answer. Me. I didn't abandon them. I abandoned you. I never heard from her again. And that was it. No fireworks. No final screaming match. Just a quiet end to 6 months of slow-burning chaos. I learned something through it all, something I wish I had learned years ago. You can't help someone who won't help themselves. And the second you stop giving, they'll either sink or learn to swim. Marla? She swam. Not because she grew up, but because, finally, no one was left to carry her. As for me, I was free. And freedom, it turns out, feels a lot like peace and peanut butter sandwiches that don't mysteriously disappear before lunch. The silence had become a blessing. It wasn't the absence of noise, kids still laughed, cartoons still played on Saturday mornings, and Willa still sang off-key in the shower. But the silence of drama, of walking on eggshells, of emotional landmines, of unpaid debts and guilt-fueled obligations, that silence, I guarded like a treasure. Months had passed since Marla left. Her absence left more than empty hangers in the closet, it left space. Mental space. Emotional space. Room to breathe again, to think clearly, to feel like my own man. And in that space, I healed. It started with the small things. I had money at the end of the month. Not a lot, but enough to go out for pancakes with Willa without checking my bank app. I got her a pair of light-up sneakers just because she asked, and I didn't have to choose between that and the electric bill. I finally replaced the worn-out couch I'd been holding onto since college, the one Marla had destroyed with soda spills and mystery stains. It felt like letting go of a past version of myself every time I sat on the new one. I fixed my car's AC, too. It had been broken for 2 summers, but I always told myself there were more important things to worry about. Not anymore. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting to life. I was shaping it. Willa noticed the difference first. "You're not tired all the time," she said one night, completely unprompted. We were playing Uno. She slapped down a reverse card with triumphant glee. I laughed. "You noticed, huh?" She nodded. "You used to come home and not talk much. Now you talk a lot." It hit me in the heart. Hard. She was right. I'd been so consumed by carrying the weight of someone else's choices that I didn't even realize I'd become a shadow of the dad I wanted to be. And now that the weight was gone, I could be present. I could be joyful. I could be dad, not just the exhausted ATM on 2 legs. Of course, not everyone understood. Some people still muttered about what I'd done, cutting off family, making Marla fend for herself with 2 kids in tow. But those people didn't live in my house. They didn't see the unpaid bills, the endless cycles of excuses, the way my own daughter had to come second again and again so her cousins could have name brand cereal. They didn't see me trying to survive 2 jobs while Marla took midday naps. They didn't hear her call me a loser for not being able to afford her children. No one who saw that would have judged me. I ran into Rachel, my cousin, at the grocery store one afternoon. She looked around before leaning in. "Mom's still pissed that Marla used her like that," she whispered, grinning. "She won't admit it, but she finally gets why you snapped." I smirked. Better late than never. "She's working at that big box retail store on Eastwood," Rachel added. "You should see her face when someone tells her to clean the bathroom aisle." I didn't smile. Okay, I did. But only a little. It wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. I'd gone through the anger. The disappointment. Even the guilt. But what remained now was clarity. I hadn't abandoned anyone. I'd set a boundary. And boundaries aren't walls, they're fences with gates. But you have to knock. Marla had always assumed she could barge through. Now she had to learn the hard way, when someone finally says no, it doesn't mean they hate you. It means they love themselves enough to stop bleeding for someone who won't even bring a bandage. A few months later, I sat down and wrote something in a notebook I kept by my bed. Something I wanted to remind myself of the next time guilt whispered in my ear. Help should be given with open hands, not broken backs. Support means offering tools, not surrendering your life. And love? Real love is mutual. Not one-sided. It was something I wanted to teach Willa, too. That being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. That being family doesn't mean being used. That being generous doesn't mean being depleted. Sometimes, I wonder if Marla will reach out again. Maybe years down the road. Maybe when things get hard again. If she does, I'll answer the phone. I won't hate her. I don't have room for that anymore. But I'll remember. I'll remember how long I let her hold my life hostage under the name of family. And I'll remember that walking away from that wasn't cruelty, it was courage. Because choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you free.